Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are grabbing the controls of the time machine and jamming the dial way back.
Way back. We're going past Rome, past Athens.
Oh yeah, we're even bypassing the Great Pyramids of Giza that, everyone knows.
We're going back to the dawn of what we might call high civilization. We're talking roughly 2650 BCE.
The third dynasty of Egypt. And our mission today is to profile one specific person. But here's the thing that gets me. He isn't a pharaoh.
No, not a king, not even born into royalty.
He started as a commoner, but by the time history was done with him, he was being worshipped as a literal god.
We're talking about Imhotep.
And I think the big question we're trying to answer is, how? How did one guy with no royal blood essentially invent the whole concept of the polymath?
It really is the invention of the polymath. I mean, before Imhotep, you had people who were good at a thing. But he's the first person in recorded history to master architecture, medicine, and statecraft. All at once.
And not just master them, he completely revolutionized them.
He did. The sources we're looking at frame him as the figure who shifted humanity from, just incremental refinement.
Do the same old stuff a little bit better each time.
Exactly. He shifted us from that to systematic thought. And that is a massive claim.
It is. But you have to set the scene, right? To understand how big a deal he was, you have to look at the world before he showed up.
Right. So we're in Egypt's archaic period. And it's organized, sure, but it's fragile.
What does that look like? What are they building with?
Mud brick, wood, and reeds. That's it. If a king died, he was buried in what's called a mastaba.
Which is basically a big, flat, rectangular bench made of dried mud, if you're trying to visualize it.
Just a mound, really. Impressive for the time, maybe, but not permanent. Mud brick crumbles, it melts in the rain.
There's no concept of forever.
Not yet. And then Pharaoh Djoser comes to the throne, and right there, next to him, is this guy, Imhotep.
And this is where it all starts, because we actually have his resume, which is just incredible.
We do. We know he's real, because his name is carved into the base of a statue of King Djoser.
Which in itself is crazy. You don't see the architect's name carved on the Statue of Liberty.
Never. It was completely unprecedented. A non-royal name on a royal monument. It just shows the immense respect Djoser had for him.
Okay, I have the list of his titles here. Let's break these down first. Chancellor of the King of Lower Egypt.
So he's the prime minister. He's running the actual government.
Then first one under the king.
That's all about proximity. He's the right-hand man, the one whispering in the king's ear.
High priest of Heliopolis. So he's the religious leader, the Pope, basically.
Yep.
And then on top of all that, chief sculptor, chief carpenter, and chief mason.
So he's also running the entire construction industry, the arts, public works. He's got the economy, the religion, and the infrastructure, all of it.
It honestly sounds like a myth. If you wrote this as a character, people would say it's unbelievable.
But the archaeology backs it up. This was a meritocracy of one. And because he held all those levers of power, he could do something that had never, ever been done.
He moved civilization from mud to stone.
He invented stone architecture, period.
Which brings us to the Step Pyramid at Saqqara. This is the image you need to have in your head.
The skyscraper, really?
It doesn't look like the smooth pyramids at Giza. It looks more like a giant 6-layered wedding cake.
6 layers, yeah. Over 200 feet high.
And we have to pause on the engineering here because I think people just hear piling up rocks and take it for granted.
Right. I was looking at the notes on this. They didn't have the wheel. They didn't have pulleys. They didn't have iron tools. How do you even cut limestone without iron?
Well, that's the genius of it. It's a material science puzzle. They had copper, which is soft. A copper chisel on limestone would get dull in, 5 minutes?
So what did they do? They probably used copper saws, but the saw wasn't what did the cutting. They would pour sand, which has quartz in it, into the cut. The saw just rubs the sand back and forth, and the hard sand grinds through the softer stone.
That requires an unbelievable amount of patience.
And organization. You're quarrying and moving blocks that weighed up to 16 tons. They used sledges and probably wet the sand in front of them to cut down on friction.
So why? Why go to all this trouble?
Because stone is eternal. Mud brick is for the living. It decays like we do. Stone is for the gods. Imhotep wasn't just building a tomb. He was building a literal stairway to heaven.
So architecture is theology.
Exactly. The shape is the function. It's to lift the king's soul up to join the sun god, Ra. But there's another layer of engineering here that's even riskier. It's not just a pile of rocks on solid ground. Underneath the pyramid is a labyrinth.
A
A
labyrinth.
huge network of tunnels and galleries. A central shaft goes down almost 30 feet. It's basically a holy city under this massive stone mountain.
Wait, so he built a 200-foot tall stone structure directly on top of a bunch of hollow tunnels.
That is the high wire act. He had to calculate the load distribution perfectly. If his math was wrong, the sheer weight of the pyramid would have crushed the tunnels and the whole thing would have collapsed into the earth.
That's insane. There's no computer modeling, no undo button.
Just his mind, his geometry. He used a gypsum-based mortar to set the stones, and he cut the outer casing at these precise angles. It just shows a grasp of mathematics that was centuries ahead of its time.
He was literally writing the manual as he went.
And he cared about how it looked, too. The outside wasn't the rough stone we see today. It was cased in fine white limestone from Tura. In the Egyptian sun, it would have been blindingly white. A beacon.
There's one detail about the complex that I just love. The serdab,
Ah, yes. The peepholes.
the peepholes. It's this sealed chamber with a life-size statue of King Djoser inside. But Imhotep drilled 2 little eye holes in the stone wall.
It's all about the theology. The king's his spirit had to be able to look out, to see the stars and to see the offerings the priests were leaving.
It just feels so practical. I'm dead, but I still want to see what's going on out there.
It is practical, and that word practical, that's the key to Imhotep. Because he didn't just apply that kind of thinking to stones, he applied it to the human body.
And this is the pivot that really gets me. From architecture to medicine. Because when I think of medicine in 2600 BCE, I'm thinking magic spells and chanting.
And there was a lot of that, to be fair. Most doctors were just magicians. But Imhotep, or at least the school thought he started, gave us the Edwin Smith Papyrus.
Okay, tell us about this document.
So the physical scroll we have is from around 1600 BCC, but linguists and scholars are pretty certain it's a copy of a much older text, probably written or inspired by Imhotep.
And it's not a book of spells.
Not at all. It feels like you're reading a modern medical textbook. It's a scientific treatise on trauma surgery. It describes 48 different cases, and each one follows a strict format. Title, examination, diagnosis, treatment.
That's the scientific method.
It is. And maybe the most incredible thing is the triage system. He categorizes every injury into one of 3 buckets. 1, an ailment I will treat. 2, an ailment I will contend with, which means, it's 50-50.
When the third one sounds a little brutal,
Yeah.
an ailment not to be treated.
It does to us, but think about how ethical it was. It was an honest prognosis. It was the physician admitting the limits of his knowledge instead of selling you a magic charm he knew wouldn't work.
That's actually a really good point. So what kind of knowledge is in this thing?
This is where it gets wild. This text contains the very first recorded use of the word brain in human history.
The first time anyone wrote that down.
Yes. For centuries, people thought the heart was the center of intelligence. But this text describes the brain. It describes the meninges, the membrane covering it. It even mentions cerebrospinal fluid.
How on earth would they know that?
The construction site, the pyramid. It was a massive, dangerous project. People were falling, getting hit by stones. Imhotep had a front row seat to head trauma. He was observing that if a worker got smashed in a certain part of the skull, they lost the ability to speak. Or if they got hit in the neck, they might be paralyzed.
So he was connecting the brain and the spinal cord to the rest of the body. He realized the brain was the control center.
A huge leap. He also recognized the pulse. And his treatments were so rational, he talks about stitching wounds with a needle and thread, using splints for broken bones.
And honey. I saw that in the notes.
Yeah.
Using honey on wounds.
Honey is fascinating. For a long time, people thought that was just superstition. But now we know honey is a natural antibacterial. It literally dehydrates and kills bacteria.
He was observing what actually worked.
And this is so important. He didn't throw out the spiritual side. He was a priest and a doctor. He used incantations alongside the splints and stitches.
The placebo effect.
He understood it. He knew the patient's state of mind mattered. If chanting a prayer calms the patient down while you're setting a bone, their heart rate drops and they heal faster. It's psychosomatic medicine.
So we have the architect, the doctor, but we're missing the administrator, the politician.
We are. And honestly, you can't build a pyramid without being a master politician and economist.
There's that story from the Famine Stela. It's from much later, but it tells a story about Imhotep in this role.
Right. So the story goes, there was a 7-year famine. The Nile hadn't flooded. Crops were failing. People were starving. The king is panicking. He can't make it rain. So he turns to Imhotep.
And what does Imhotep do?
Well, He doesn't just, do a rain dance. He goes to the temple, he consults the sacred texts, and he has a dream where the god Khnum speaks to him.
And the god promises to end the famine.
Essentially, yes. But here's the Imhotep twist. He doesn't just wake up and say, "We're good, the god said so." He wakes up and he implements logistics. He organizes the grain stores, he manages the distribution, he advises the king on how to appease the priesthood.
He interpreted the divine, but he solved the problem with supply chain management.
That is his genius in a nutshell. Practical application. Think about building the pyramid again. That wasn't just engineering, it was an economic engine for the entire country.
You had to feed thousands of workers.
Feed them, house them, clothe them. We found the workers' villages. They had bakeries, breweries, they had medical care, probably using Imhotep's own methods.
It was a massive government jobs program.
It was. It unified the country. Imhotep had to organize trade to Nubia for gold, to the Levant for wood. He was running a complex state operation.
Just staggering to think of one person holding all that in their brain. Okay, Tuesday morning, brain surgery. Tuesday afternoon, national grain distribution. Wednesday, design a tomb for a god.
And that incredible breadth of ability is exactly why he didn't stay a man for very long in the historical memory.
Right, the deification. How does a commoner become a god?
It did not happen overnight. This wasn't instant. It took about 2,000 years.
That is a slow climb up the ladder.
A very slow burn. It started in the Middle Kingdom. He was remembered as a great sage. Scribes would pour a drop of water from their inkwells as a little offering to him before they started writing.
Like a patron saint of scribes.
Pretty much. The ideal wise man. Then, in the New Kingdom, he gets an upgrade. He's called the son of Ptah, the creator god.
So the culture is basically saying, this guy was so smart, he must have been part god.
Exactly. And by the Sate period, around 600 BCE, he's fully deified. He has his own temples, his own priests. He becomes the god of medicine, scribes, and architects.
And people would actually go on pilgrimages to him for healing.
Yes, this is the coolest part. Sick people would travel to Saqqara, to his temple, and sleep there. It was a hospital sanctuary.
Dream incubation.
Right. They hoped Imhotep would appear in a dream and give them a diagnosis or a prescription.
It's amazing that his legacy shifted from the builder to the healer.
It shows what really mattered to everyday people. But his fame didn't stop there. The Greeks got in on the act.
What did they do?
Well, when they conquered Egypt, they looked at the cult of Imhotep, this god of healing and wisdom, and said, hey, this guy is just like our god Asclepios. So they merged them. He became an international figure.
He really created the archetype of the sage, didn't he? You see echoes of him in figures like Joseph from the Bible, interpreting dreams and saving the kingdom.
Absolutely. It's all connected to the Egyptian concept of ma'at, of cosmic order. To them, architecture, medicine, statecraft, they weren't separate fields. They were all ways of creating order from chaos. Imhotep was the master of creating order.
So if we zoom out, what's the big takeaway from Imhotep for us today?
I think the central thesis is that he demonstrated the power of the integrated mind. He showed that one person, through just rational observation, could fundamentally change the trajectory of civilization.
He really challenges that whole divide between art and science. Today we put people in boxes. You're a creative type or you're a STEM type.
Imhotep was both. He was an architect and physician and a politician, and he saw them as connected. He used the same systematic thinking for all of it.
It makes you wonder about our world now, which is so hyper-specialized.
It does. We've gained so much depth from specialization, of course, but we may have lost something too. The sources say that for Imhotep, knowledge itself had sacred power. It was all one thing.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought for everyone listening.
We live in an age of information overload. We have access to everything Imhotep knew and a million times more. But we so often lack that integration. His story really asks us, have we lost the power that comes from seeing the whole picture?
Maybe the next great leap for us won't come from a specialist who knows everything about one tiny thing.
But from a generalist, a modern Imhotep. Someone who can see the hidden connection between the structure of a building, the healing of a body, and the health of a society. Someone who can finally put all the pieces together.
A challenge to all of us. Thanks for this deep dive.
My pleasure.